practice is always important, especially in stop motion. That's why today I'm going to show you how to do one exercise that every beginner animator should do, the bouncing ball. Hey guys, welcome back to Learning Curve Tech, where I learn tech with you. And on this channel, I make stop motion tutorials for beginners on a budget, as well as tutorials for more advanced animators. So if you are looking for those kinds of videos, you can subscribe and hit the bell down below so you don't miss out on any further videos. So first, why do the bouncing ball exercise? Well, a sphere is a very simple shape to animate. It doesn't really require much skill to animate a bouncing ball, whereas a walk cycle is surprisingly one of the most hard things to animate properly. Also, the bouncing ball exercise can help you get a really good grasp of several different animation principles, such as timing, squash and stretch, exaggeration, slow in and slow out, staging, and arcs. So now that you know why the bouncing ball exercise is so important for beginner animators, let's start the animation process. So we're here in Stop Motion Pro Eclipse, and the first thing I did is I set up my camera. I have a Canon DSLR, so I have it set to that. And then I also have it set to the small superfine setting. I find that this is the best setting. It's really high quality, but it also is a small enough file size that it makes it really easy to animate with. I have my shutter speed set to 1/10 of a second, my aperture set to 9, and my ISO set to 800. Now first, what you're going to want to do when you do any animation is plan it out. Here's the ball, and I want the ball to come in to the left of the third guideline. This can help you a lot when animating to know how to stage your scene the best. So this is the staging setup. And when you're staging, you want to make it the most clear what you're doing in your animation. So when we plan it out, we're going to have the ball come down at an angle till it hits right about that cross point, so right about there. So it's going to come into the frame, down, then of course it's going to bounce up to about there, go back down, bounce up to there, go back down, maybe bounce a little more, and then just kind of do a little couple bounces till it stops at about this line. And that's the plan. So once I know what my plan is, I need to take a frame so I can make this ball actually bounce, because in stop motion you're gonna have this rig right here. So if I'm gonna have a rig, I need to take a frame at the beginning. And so let's see where we want the ball to land. I think about there would be a good place for the ball to land. So since I know that, I'm gonna take a teensy weensy piece of putty just so I remember where the ball's gonna land. There. Now it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just so you make sure you have the same focus when you take your frame. And now if we want to actually check the focus even better, we can zoom in and move on over to where that piece of putty is. It's fine, right there. Okay, and I'm gonna focus that. So that looks good. And so once I have it focused on that spot, I might even move this a little bit out of the frames. So it's mostly a clean frame, and then we're gonna take this clean slate frame, whatever you wanna call it. We're gonna take that clean frame, and you'll notice that produced 2 frames, and that's because I am on 24 frames per second over here, and I'm shooting in 2s. And if you wanna learn more about what that means, check out the video above. So now that I have that clean frame, I'm ready to start animating. That's what we're gonna do. When a ball is falling, we're gonna implement something called squash and stretch. And that's basically stretching the ball out as it's going fast, and then when it hits the surface, it's gonna flatten out. Squash and stretch is really just gonna help make this look more realistic, like a real ball would, according to the laws of physics. We want to make it look like it as a real ball with real weight. So we're gonna flatten that out so it kind of stretches. And one thing when you're stretching an object, you want to make sure that it's the same size, but also you don't want to turn it into a cube or turn it into any other shape. So we're gonna have this come down, and that's gonna hit right there. And so now that we know that, we're gonna start animating. I'll get the rig ready. And if you want some tutorials on how to do rigs, how to make a rig, I'll link those up above and again in the description below. So once you find the frame where you want it to come in, move it into the perfect angle, the perfect position. Try to hold as steady as possible. I know it's very hard, but we'll take that frame right about There. Now I know this animation isn't gonna be perfect because my arm's gonna move every frame. So again, yeah, it's not gonna look perfect, but we're gonna try. Do the best you can. If you want to find some other way to rig it so it's more steady, you can, but this is just a very quick method. So now turn on your onion skinning using this slider that basically just mixes the two frames so you can see what you've been doing, and then we'll go ahead, move on to the next frame. So go back to where it's supposed to be. It won't exactly hit my original target that I wanted to hit, so it might go past it, but again, that's part of doing this handheld. It's not going to be perfect. That looks pretty good. I mean, you can see between those two frames it did move a little bit, and it's because the camera is capturing two frames. But we can always go back and, you know, delete one and then copy the other if we want to make it look more convincing and we want to really give it that shot on twos feel, which again, if you don't know what that means, I'll have the video in the description below. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you do want to frequently watch through your video to make sure it looks good. And that seems to be working pretty well so far. So I'll go ahead and I'll keep shooting. Now we're already almost to the ground, so just make sure that you line up your shot. Like I said earlier, make sure you line it up using the onion skinning. That's what onion skin's for. Whew, that was a little rough. Let's see how that turns out. Okay, that frame is totally blurry. So what I'm gonna do is go back, right click, hide that one. Let's do that again. There we go. Then we're gonna go right click, repeat, and then just one frame. So there you go. Now it is perfectly the same frame. It doesn't change at all. And we'll go back and do that to these two since they're slightly different. Now it does look really choppy right now, but once we finish the animation, I've always noticed that at first it looks really bad, but once you finish it all together, it looks really good. So it should be hitting right about there. Again, I don't know if this is going to be completely, you know, 100% accurate. It might not look great, so if you want to spend more time on this, you can. But it's always good just to get practice, and you can do this more than once. It's a great exercise. I do it often because it is a very easy exercise to do, and it's a really great exercise to do as well. It really teaches a lot of different aspects of stop motion. So let's take that frame, let's watch that through a little bit, and we can always go back and delete frames if it's too slow. Now another thing, you might be noticing that I'm moving it less and less within each frame. So, and this is called ease in and ease out, or slow in and slow out. So it's getting smaller increments between frames as we go on to the end of each, end of each movement. And I do have a video explaining this. I'll have it up above and in the description below. Now just gonna squash a little bit more to kind of finalize the impact, make it a little more cartoony. And what I mean by cartoony is this is kind of exaggeration. Exaggeration is quite an important aspect of stop motion, or a principle of stop motion, because exaggeration actually does help make your animation more realistic, believe it or not, because people are used to seeing the exaggeration. If you animated a bouncing ball to the exact measurements of how an actual bouncing ball would bounce, this wouldn't look terribly interesting. So that's why in animation you want to make it look really cartoony, and that really helps sell the shot a lot better. Now I do feel like that's a little bit too slow of a squash. I might just get rid of some frames, but let's keep moving on. Let's keep those frames for now. You can always go back and delete them later. Now it's gonna start coming up. So that looks like a good frame. Let's watch it through. Now we're gonna have it come up pretty quickly. And if you need to, mark the spot where the ball is supposed to be, you can always just take a little tiny piece of putty, like I had earlier, and just stick it to the spot. So I know that my ball is right next to there. So between those two frames, that looks pretty good. And let's tilt it a little bit so it looks like it's flying in a different direction. Now I think that's leaning to a little too much, so that looks about the right angle. If the ball came in from over here, it's probably gonna bounce up over here, bounce over here, and then maybe dribble out a little bit and then stop right around here. Yeah, and I'm definitely gonna go back and get rid of some of those frames when it lands. It just looks too slow for me. Now let's just keep moving on, and we can always go back and delete some. Okay, now we're gonna maybe do right about there. And And then we're gonna bring it, squish it down a little bit more. Now it's only gonna be going about till here. So it's gonna start curving over into the arc. And this is another important aspect of animation, is arcs. Because really, because of gravity, everything on Earth moves in arcs. Okay, now that it's at the top of the arc, it is gonna be basically a perfectly round ball. So no squash and stretch. Okay, here we go. And now I do think the angle that I have the ball jumping at is really off, but again, this is just a quick kind of tutorial of this. It's not gonna be perfect, but it seems to look pretty good to me so far. Now it's gonna start going back down. So what you can do is, actually, this is a really cool feature that I kind of recently learned about. If you go to the frame that, for this bouncing ball, for example, once it gets to the top, it's gonna basically mirror this frame, but on the other side. So if we click on that and then we click on this one, we now have onion skin from that frame. That way we can go back and, you know, kind of model the same frame on the opposite side and, you know, model the angle, just get a better idea of it. That's almost the same size. So we're gonna go basically repeat this somewhere about there, and you can always go back and shoot this again if you need to. It looks pretty good. It looks pretty good so far. So now we're gonna go back and to this frame and then kind of, you know, mirror that. So we're gonna squish it out more, try to make it look like that frame as much as possible. And then again, that's about that far off the ground. So very slightly off the ground, maybe a centimeter. And then we're gonna go and do it on this side. This is gonna be a little tricky, but do your best. Right about there. Let's watch that through. It looks very smooth so far, but of course you're probably gonna go back and delete some frames. Now this is the frame where I'm able to actually put the ball on the ground again. So we're gonna put it about there using that little marker of putty that we have. It needs to be squashed out a little bit more, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that, you know, like that. And then once we've captured that, it's gonna squash. You know, you'll get the hang of it eventually. You know, you'll be able to do a lot of different kinds of animation, like walk cycles. You know, maybe we'll make a video about that too. That'd be kind of cool. It seems to me that it's in the same spot. It looks pretty good, so let's just capture the frame, you know? Better to have more frames than not enough. So just keep going and keep moving forward. Now keep watching it through. And yes, it does look like we'll have to speed this up quite a bit. So I might go back and just delete every other frame. Now we're gonna go ahead with not as much stretch. Okay, find where we need it to be. Now we're using the rig again, so get that ready if you have it. It's gonna be at the top of the arc now, so we're gonna want to roll this out and make it more of a round shape. Stick the rig back on. Looks pretty good to me. There we go. Now it's gonna squish out again. So squish it until it's the right shape. Use the onion skin hack that I showed you to go and line it up with that frame. It looks pretty good. Yep, looks perfect. Now let's do that over here. Now let's go watch that through again. Okay, looks good. Now it's gonna land and start just rolling. So again, make sure you round that out with your fingers and get it nice and round. Right about there. Should be fabulous. You know what else would be fabulous? If you hit the like button, if you are liking this video so far. And I know it's a long video, but bear with me guys, we're almost there. So now it's just gonna continue to roll. And using ease out to end the movement. So we're almost done guys. Got a little bit left to animate, you know, maybe one more frame. And remember, be creative with this. You can add as many jumps as you'd like. You can do whatever you would like with the ball and, you know, have fun, learn a lot. This exercise is really good, again, for learning a lot about the principles of stop motion. One more frame. Now let's watch it through. Now I do feel that maybe there's too many frames. So let's go back and check out those frames. So I'll meet you guys when I'm done. If you want to learn more about the principles of animation and how you can improve your stop motion, check out these videos. You can also subscribe by clicking on the logo. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Learning Curve Tech.